The question would be, what is the business case there for you to target women? And have you, what are the success factors that you have seen in doing that, and any limitations that you have faced in working in that space and providing the services? Maybe we can start with you, Sadia, because you'd already hinted at the products that you are already developing for women.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Anne. So maybe before I directly answer our question, I want to take a step back and talk a bit more about how BRAC works. And for us, the focus on women is not just because from our microfinance side, we're linked to a wider BRAC network that has social development programs for women. It's not just that. For us, it's an integral part of why we do business, and it's firmly embedded in our mission. Like I said before, really focusing on women living in poverty in rural and hard-to-reach areas. So in line with this mission, we really wanted to focus on women smallholder farmers. And we tried to also break that down a little bit to figure out which women smallholder farmers we want to focus on. So a lot of the farmers that we serve are women who might be farming at a very, very small commercial scale, women who might not necessarily be part of cooperatives or farmer-based organizations, who might not be able to access these associations and organizations, and who might be farming mostly for household purposes with some commercial sales. And the reason why we wanted to focus on this specific segment of women was because they're often the face of agriculture in a lot of the markets where we operate. And they can also have a multiplier effect in terms of building the resilience and food security of their households, of their communities. But then on the flip side of the coin, they're also more vulnerable to climatic shocks because of gendered norms and social constraints that limit their access to financing, access to skills, information, and other services. And what you mentioned earlier too, like they have very little access to formal credit because they're considered too difficult or costly to serve, because a lot of the eligibility requirements that formal financial institutions face, they're unable to meet. And also because a lot of the products offered by financial institutions are not designed with their specific needs, aspirations, and behaviors in mind. So when we started our agri-finance journey, we wanted to first get right an agriculture loan product that is specifically designed and targeted for this segment. We wanted to first understand what sort of challenges and constraints this specific segment of women smallholder farmers experience and design around that. And through that sort of gender-inclusive, client-centric design process, we were able to actually see very promising results. So in the most recent slate of agri-finance piloting that we did in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Rwanda, 83% of our clients said that they'd never accessed loans from formal financial institutions in the past. And that was doubly remarkable for us, or surprising for us, because in a lot of the branches where we were actually piloting this agri-finance loan, we already had an existing presence. We were offering some of our business loans, some of our other loan products. So that meant we were also able to reach a segment we probably would not have reached had it not been for this client-centric product that was designed. The second sort of impressive result for us is, and this counters the sort of perception that women smallholder farmers are risky to serve, is that during the piloting period, we had 99% on-time repayment from these smallholder farmers. And the reason for this, and this is what our clients told us, was that they were now able to easily access affordable, appropriate loan products that met their cash flow needs.
So at what point do you leverage the services of the non-profit side to support the business of the MFI?
At a strategic level, we collaborate very closely with our NGO counterparts that provide the social development programming. And even within our broader BRAC mission, we recognize that microfinance is an integral part of development, but it isn't the only part. So it has the economic and social development arms really have to work hand in hand. So what we try to do and what we've done particularly in Liberia and Sierra Leone, where there was an overlap between our NGO arm and our microfinance arm, the NGO arm was providing input support, was providing training, market linkage and market development and facilitation activities, and they would then transition to microfinance services, where we would then be providing the agriculture loan, where we would then be providing the financial literacy training. So wherever possible, in program design, implementation, we collaborate very closely. But then again, it's not always possible because we don't have our NGO counterparts everywhere. They may not also provide all of the services that our women smallholder farmers might need. And also, the NGO side is very much grant funded. So beyond the project end duration, how do you sustain these critical services to make sure that you're able to unlock the productive potential of women smallholder farmers?
Thank you. And Sudi, maybe to you, to pick it up from where Sadia has left off. So you are working with the KTDA Foundation, but the factories of KTDA are largely managed under KTDA MS. So could you maybe describe to us, maybe tell us a little bit about how you work and how the two organizations work hand in hand to support each other in this aim of inclusive business models?
Thank you. I think for us, we've integrated sustainable business practices into what we do as an organization. So sometimes we don't differentiate, this is what business would do and this is what the KTDA Foundation would do, because all our programs are integrated. Yeah, for us, women are almost an integral part of our business and how we work, because if you just look at 15 years back, we had only about 10% of farmers who were registered as KTDA farmers. But as we speak now, we are at 33. And what I can tell you is not necessarily that we've increased acreage, but the organization deliberately, together with the foundation, that is the business side, we started talking to our farmers because we knew that women are a very important part of the value chain. And now what we have done is to talk to our farmers. And for example, you know, there is this common thing around November. People would say that, you know, the roads are leading to Kericho because farmers have been paid bonus. And, you know, the men disappear for 2 weeks and then come back with nothing. So for us, we were very deliberate, and this is an issue that we wanted to tackle because, you know, it leads to a lot of gender-based violence. And we put in programs that were gender transformative in nature in terms of how the family manages the resources, how they manage the tea business, and what is the role of women, the children, and men in the tea business as well, so that people see diversity and inclusion is a very important aspect towards their business. And you know, you'll realize that this increases productivity and in the process also increases the incomes. But then we realized sometimes, you know, this is not an easy thing. How do you practically bring these women into the tea value chain? That's why now we had this campaign around, you know, if you have 10,000 bushes, can you give 3,000 bushes to your wife, 3,000 bushes to your children, so that then you bring them into the tea value chain so that they can also enjoy the fruits of the tea proceeds. So that's one of the ways that we were able, you know, to bring women into this space. But secondly, we also wanted to change the narrative around, you know, that women cannot own tea, okay? And for our factories and the leaders, that is something that we went down and decided, we have to sensitize them to see the business value. Because, what we do basically is in the business of making people happy. Tea is not just a drink. Tea is an experience, and we make, billions of people happy in the world as you take your cup of tea. So for us, there is benefit in terms of, getting into that space. It's not been easy because of the cultural norms, because 32% of the households are led by women. Yet, out of that, it's only 1% who own land.
Maybe, thank you so much for sharing. And I think at the end of this, we are also going to just come back here and answer a few questions. What we are going to be doing now is going into group discussions. We will share some write-up on some of the challenges that the businesses are facing. And what we want to do is to have you discuss that in the context of the questions that will also be in the write-ups that are being shared right now.
So we're talking about a major class issue that we're trying to change here, with women sort of being disadvantaged in that. And I guess what we were thinking about sort of as we brainstormed, what could possibly be the solutions to an issue of that magnitude. One is we sort of thought about the main asset. Is that the land, where of course men have title deeds? Or you clarified for us that actually in your terms, it's really the ownership of the tea bush. Yeah, so if you want to change land ownership, that's a big thorny issue. But there may be some opportunities there, which I think you're exploring already, in terms of women's ownership and control over tea bushes. And certainly we've seen that a bit in the Sokohuru, your rival, your competitors, where women are leasing land and farming tea and actually doing quite well. So it's interesting for KTDA to look at your competitor markets, the free markets for tea, where women actually seem to have much more economic power, and that's partly because of the way that the asset is structured within the business model. There's another thing about the threshold that you set for 500 bushes. Is that also working against women's involvement in the value chain? Because maybe they can't control or own 500 bushes, but maybe they can enter the value chain through having fewer bushes, not having the threshold. We also talked a bit about the bonus, and the tea bonus at the end of the year, which is often controlled by men. I mean, the SACCOs used to have a model where they facilitated households to do things like education and so forth, using the payments from the SACCO. They had funds that enabled that to happen. What if the bonus was no longer given to, say, the owner of the land or the majority shareholder in the bushes, which is the man? What if that bonus was kind of channeled into a fund that was maybe perhaps branded around either education or health or some other fund that the household could choose? That would be far more in the interests of women who are really striving very hard to accumulate funds, often to invest in areas that they care about, like education. Yeah, so that might also help to shift, if you like, the value proposition for women from the tea income. And then we also talked a little bit about the institutions where women already have power. For example, chamas. I mean, you're working through institutions where men have power, cooperatives, SACCOs, factories, and so forth. But obviously, all these women that you're dealing with are probably in chamas, and they're organized in some way beyond the household. In the household, the woman does not always have power. So we're just interested to know how KTDA is leveraging the chamas to get stronger participation by women. And then I think lastly, we mentioned, actually there's two last things. I might not do the last one, but second last is youth. So obviously things are really changing. I mean, we're talking about a situation where older men, have always controlled this value chain, yeah? But as we get a whole younger generation, a more digitized generation and so forth, a generation possibly with different norms, some of the things that you're talking about, the certification and so forth, a more progressive branding and model for Kenya's sort of tea industries, perhaps there's an opportunity around the new generation, around youth, to actually shift the gender dynamics and make them much more equal. And perhaps also related to that, you know, there's also the carbon credit. So it's not only gender certification, there may be something around ownership of the bushes rather than, say, just the land, you know, in terms of sort of carbon sequestration and some carbon credits that could actually perhaps go through the chummers to supporting some of women's interests, if you like, you know, in terms of that value chain. So that's a very muddled response. Sorry about that, but lots in there. But anyway, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the team. Please put your hands together for this team. Great input. Suri, you have 2 Kenyan minutes to to react. Thank you.
Kenyan time. Thank you for the contribution. I think I want to underscore that our business model is not a cooperative. It's a limited company. And a limited company, you know, people are there to make profits. So the way the factories are registered, they are registered as limited companies, and they are there for business. So what you are bringing up is interesting, because probably, you know, in a cooperative setup, that would be very easy. You know, there are laws on how you run a company. I think that's why it would be a big challenge to modify the current model that we are working with, because at the end of the day, you know, people have invested in that particular factory, and they have shares, and they want a return out of it. So that's why it would be very difficult. If it was a cooperative model, that we can see how to work around it. In terms of chamas and chamas, you know, for us, we have what we call farmer field schools. It's a methodology that we use to bring together farmers. Be it when we are doing the program I talked about, the comprehensive economic and social empowerment program. So we use chamas, we use VSLAs to empower women, because again, we know the power of saving in terms of now creating wealth is through those particular groups. And even the way we empower our farmers is through groups, not just individuals. So that's something that we always work with, and we want to work with already existing structures. The youth, that's a very interesting perspective. We have only 21% of youth that's below 35 who are tea farmers. They don't like tea farming, just as they don't like other farming as well. So we are trying to bring other aspects into farming, especially when we are looking at diversification, when we bring in like black soldier fly farming, which, you know, looks attractive and can put more money into the pockets of the youth farmers, because a number of them, again, they are what we call telephone farmers. They just call and, you know, they find out whether that bonus has gone into their account. So that's a group that we are looking at. Carbon credit is something that we are working with Food and Agriculture Organization for tea to be recognized as a carbon sequester. Of course, you know, there are issues around that, because, you know, you have to pluck, and, you know, they're saying, you know, that cannot qualify. But remember, we're also telling them that, you know, a tea bush also holds a lot of carbon on the soil. So it's a conversation that we're having. But now we are working with partners who are thinking, you know, you look at the totality, the tea farm, and, you know, if you are doing regenerative agriculture practices, climate smart agriculture practices, regenerative agriculture, we can be able to earn carbon credits. And then now what you're saying, we can use even that money now that we've generated, and we can aggregate that towards products that support women empowerment.
You want to touch on why 500 bushes and not lower than that? Is it because that's the minimum?
It has to make business sense. And I think still even the discussions we're having around the economics of tea. You know, the farmer who has about 500, probably they barely, you know, meeting, you know, if you just look at, you know, what is the benchmark, they would not even reach halfway of the income that they need for them to survive. And as a responsible organization, you can't tell farmers, just grow tea. Because even with 500, we are still struggling because of the economics of it.
For context, 500 bushes is about 1/8 of an acre. So it's quite minimal. Yeah, so thank you so much.